Welcome to Basecamp, a climbing magazine podcast. Thank you for tuning in. I'm your host, Kevin Riley, and have a terrific episode for you with two very inspiring climbers. Our first interview features Nina Williams, a professional climber best known for her first female ascent of Ambrosia, an intimidating V11 highball boulder problem in the Buttermilks of Bishop, California. Earlier this year, Nina teamed up with Climbing Magazine to produce an online course called Intro to Bouldering that covers the fundamentals of the discipline, and on October 1st, a follow-up course called Boulder Harder will be launched. The 8-part online course covers gear, advanced movement, techniques, proper training, and bouldering etiquette that intermediate and advanced boulderers need to take their bouldering to the next level. Then we have an interview with Quinn Brett, who endured a horrific accident on El Cap, falling approximately 100 feet from the Boot Flake onto the Texas Flake when she and her partner, Josie McKee, attempted to speed climb the nose in a day. I visited her at her place in Estes Park, Colorado, and we talked about how she originally got into rock climbing while growing up in New Hope, Minnesota, what it was like being a climbing ranger in Rocky Mountain National Park, what attracted her to big wall speed climbing, the events that took place on the day of the accident, and how her life has changed for better or for worse as a result of the accident and being paralyzed from the waist down. But first, a word from our sponsor. This episode is brought to you by the Access Fund. Did you know 1 in 5 climbing areas in the United States is threatened by an access issue? Whether it's private land lost to development, public land managers overregulating climbing, or climber impacts degrading the environment, the list of threats is long and constantly evolving. At Access Fund, they're on a mission to protect climbing access and the integrity of America's outdoor climbing areas. See how you can get involved at accessfund.org. All right. So I see you got an injury here. What's going on with your knee?
Yeah, so about 2.5 weeks ago, I competed in the Seco Block competition, which is an event in Salt Lake City that involves deep water soloing. And the climbers will essentially race on a 50-foot overhanging wall with no ropes or anything. Mm-hmm. And when we fall into an Olympic-sized swimming pool. So the landing is softer than concrete a little bit, but not by much. Yeah. And I jumped off the top of the wall. As I have in the past, I've competed in Seco Block for the past 4 years or so. And I thought I had everything right. I thought I knew how to fall, and I penciled into the water just as normal, but something about hitting the water impacted my knee. And I can't say that I'm guiltless because 2 days prior, I had hiked to Upper Chaos in Rocky Mountain National Park 2 days in a row, and then went straight to Seco Block with no rest day. So part of that was probably my fault for not resting or stretching or anything before then. But yeah, when I hit the water, I felt instant sharp pain in my knee, and turns out I had just gotten sort of a low-grade MCL tear.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
How long are you out for, you think?
From now, so it's been 2.5 weeks, and I just started PT. I'll probably get to climb in another 1.5 to 2 weeks, and then I should hopefully be fully recovered between 8 to 12 weeks.
That's not too bad.
Yeah, it's all things considered, it could have been a lot worse. I didn't get any like ACL tears or LCL or meniscus stuff, so yeah, I'm counting my blessings for sure.
So I saw you compete over at Seco Rock over at Summersville Lake. I think that was, 2 years ago or something like that? Yeah, that was almost
exactly 2 years ago.
Yeah. So do you enjoy the deep water soloing? Is it something you look forward to or something you kind of get nervous for?
I can't say it's something I really look forward to, but I like that environment mainly because it's an uncomfortable situation to be in. Just being high above the ground without any ropes, and not really being able to rehearse the moves or know what you're in for. Like, you're definitely gonna fall at some point. Unlike, roped climbing or even highballing, I you don't know it's up there. So when you fall off, you hit the water, and it's definitely a bit scary. But facing that sort of mentality, like that fear, and then working through it in that moment is a really cool situation to be in as well.
And it's definitely a lot more exciting for spectators. I remember being at the Seco Rock. I was just like on the edge of my seat being like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's definitely spectator friendly because, I mean, it's kind of like watching a train wreck. I feel like spectators are there for the falls just as much as they're there for the climbing. And, you know, in general, it's pretty safe. There's always some type of injuries, like minor injuries going on, minor being like blown eardrums or torn MCLs or something, but nobody's really dying.
Yeah.
You know?
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not yet.
So where are you from originally? I read that you're from the New England area.
Yeah, I'm from Rhode Island originally.
Oh, okay.
I sort of split time between Rhode Island and Connecticut growing up. But yeah, I traveled all around the New England area.
I'm guessing you spent a lot of time at Lincoln Woods.
I did. That's where I first started climbing.
Well,
Yeah,
that's awesome.
I tell people that I'm from Rhode Island, and they're like, "There's really not really any mountains over there," and I'm like, "Nope, just had good old Lincoln Woods."
Yeah.
15 minutes from my house, which is still, you know, 15 minutes away is a great resource for a young person growing up. So it was really accessible.
Yeah, I call that place like the home of the hardest V4. There is this one V4 called Heart of Glass that just took me like seasons after seasons. And what I really learned about climbing out there is it's so season dependent. You really just have to like climb in the fall and the winter to tackle a lot of your projects.
Yep. There's like one perfect fall day and one perfect spring day. And then all the rest of the days in New England are really hard to deal with.
So how did you get into climbing and bouldering in the first place?
So I actually first encountered climbing at an outdoor artificial climbing wall in New Hampshire. I was at a ski resort in the summertime, just walking around with my parents, and there was this big outdoor wall. And I had never tried climbing before, so I tried it. And I was kind of naturally good at it off the bat. And I had never been naturally good at anything before that. I had tried horseback riding. I had tried swimming and soccer and ballet, and just never really cut it. But when I tried climbing, I was like, oh, this is something, you know, that makes me feel good about myself.
Yeah.
So I joined a climbing team when I went back to Rhode Island. And just took it from there.
And were you initially like really into bouldering, into sport climbing, into both?
I was initially really into bouldering. Well, actually, I was initially into both. I did both bouldering and sport climbing growing up just because that's how the climbing team operated. But we did more bouldering than sport climbing because Lincoln Woods was so close to the gym.
Yeah.
And we had a sport climbing crag, Rumney, New Hampshire, but that was about 3 hours away, so a little harder.
And in New England, like I'm really into trad climbing, but I learned how to climb in Western Mass by Farley Ledges. And you just end up bouldering more than anything because the bouldering quality is so much better, I feel, than the sport climbing or the trad quality.
Yeah, definitely.
So tell me about being on a team. Like, do you feel like being on a team and being coached helped you progress faster than if you were just learning on your own?
Yes, being on a team and being coached definitely helped my progress, mainly because it gave me a community, it gave me a support system, and it gave me a lot of external motivation and encouragement to get outside and to continue, you know, exploring this sport that I otherwise didn't have any experience in. And I was in an age of climbing where my coaches were just as adamant about us going outside as they were about us competing. Actually, they were more adamant about us going outside than competing. We competed as a team, and our coaches were always like, yeah, you know, I guess because we're a climbing team, we should compete. But the outside emphasis was a lot greater, which I think is a bit different nowadays for climbing teams. So I feel like I really grew up in this 50-50 environment, which has helped my climbing today.
Did you have a favorite area around there?
In New England?
Yeah.
I mean, probably Lincoln Woods, just because we went there so often. Now, having traveled around a bit more, I'd say Farley. I mean, it's probably one of my favorite areas. And Rumney, too. Rumney's, I mean, it's great.
Interesting. So tell me, you put together Intro for Bouldering, an online course for Climbing Magazine. Can you tell me a little bit about that course and who it's for?
Yeah, so I partnered up with Climbing Magazine to create this Introduction to Climbing course, which is all online based. And it's pretty cool because you can just watch a lot of videos and read about the basics of climbing. And it's a way to sort of shortcut any tips or like any hard part about climbing that otherwise you might need like a big group of friends or a mentor or a coach to tell you about. And so climbing, as it gets more mainstream and a lot more people are getting into it, it can be pretty intimidating to walk into a crowded climbing gym or a crowded crag and not really know who to talk to or how to act or what to do. So the Intro to Bouldering course is for those folks who want that shortcut, just want like a little bit more information before going straight to the gym and diving into it.
And do you think it's easier for people to learn through video than like through a book or something like that?
I would say video is definitely better than a book, just because you can see the action. You can visualize. I mean, you don't even have to visualize. The visualization is right there for you.
Yeah.
So you can have this virtual coach in a sense telling you, here's the deal. Here's the best ways to do things.
And how did you guys put together the syllabus for that course? Was there a group of you guys putting it together, or is it something you put together on your own?
I put it together mostly by myself, but I also talked to a lot of friends and was like, hey guys, if you can remember back when, you just started climbing out, what were some of your biggest fears and what were some of the things that you were most nervous about? Yeah. And then I tried to put myself in a beginner's shoes and was like, all right, what are the basics of climbing and what can we go over?
Have you done any coaching prior to this, or was this really your first endeavor?
I have actually coached before. I did a lot of informal coaching as a teenager with really young youth teams. I also coached at ABC, Team ABC here in Boulder. So again, with a lot of youth. And then I've coached some adults and taught some intro clinics as well. And it's really cool seeing the excitement and just like the newness of new climbers going into the community. Like there's so much improvement to be done.
Yeah.
but so much excitement as well. It's really refreshing.
So on October 1st, you're releasing another series, Boulder Harder. It's an 8-part series. I imagine it's a lot more in-depth and possibly for a more like intermediate and advanced boulder.
Yes. So Boulder Harder is aimed at the people who have already gone through the motions. They've been to the gym. They've climbed, V3, V4, V5, even harder than that. And climbers get to a point where they, as a beginner climber, you progress really quickly. It's inevitable. If you just keep climbing, your body's going to get used to that. But then at some point, everyone hits a plateau.
Yeah, definitely.
And the plateau can be at any grade. But once you hit that plateau and you feel that you're not improving, it gets to a point where just climbing and just going to the gym or just going to the crag won't really cut it. And so the Boulder Harder course introduces some really basic training concepts. And I really want to work on taking away the stigma of training, in that training really isn't complicated, and it doesn't have to be this big plan or this, huge ordeal that you have to take away time from climbing and the rest of your life. Any kind of training, any sort of consistent pattern is better than doing nothing.
Sure.
And so once you hit that plateau and you take the Boulder Harder class, you can learn about these new concepts that will take you to that next level, no matter what level you're at right now.
Well, I found personally, especially being out in New England, like I always thought like if I get stronger, if my fingers get stronger, I'm going to be able to climb harder. But that really wasn't true. And it wasn't until I really started focusing a lot on my footwork that I was able to like bypass that ceiling that I hit. Because like, especially in New England, you have this like teeny like granite footholds, a lot of smearing. Do you guys go over footwork as well? Is that a part of the course?
Yes. In the Boulder Harder course, we put a lot of emphasis on the 3 concepts of climbing, which is the physical, technical, and mental aspects. And so when people think about training, their immediate thought is to go to the physical. But really, that's just 1/3 of what makes up a well-rounded climber. So in Boulder Harder, we talk about mental training and technical training as far as movement drills, how to overcome fear of falling, how to talk to yourself in this inner way that's productive and not going to hold you back.
Mm-hmm. So like I read a lot of educational books about climbing, and I always just read them like from cover to cover. Would you recommend that these videos be consumed like all at once and kind of like binge watched? Or are they meant to be viewed over a longer period of time?
It really depends on your learning style. If you're the type of person that likes to, binge read or binge watch TV shows, then like going through this whole course could be the way. But the great thing about these courses is that they're always available to you. Once you buy that course, then you can reference it whenever you want. You'll always have that resource. So if you like to learn a little bit slower or take it at your own pace, then you can watch a few videos and then go out and climb and then come back and watch a few more videos and be like, oh, this is a cool concept. I'm going to try it, and go out and try it. And then once you've watched the full series, you can gain, this greater understanding and then piece it together yourself.
Yeah. So I guess it is kind of nice if you binge watch it at first, you know what you don't know, can go out and try to practice it and then rewatch them as you need to.
Yeah.
Great. So where did you guys shoot these videos? Were they shot on one location or all over the place?
We mainly shot them at Joe's Valley in Utah, which is a really popular bouldering area. And we also shot at the Longmont Climbing Collective here in Colorado.
Nice. What was your favorite part of shooting the videos? Or do you have any like memories or funny tidbits you could share with us?
Well, it turns out it's really hard to talk about climbing when you can't demonstrate it. So for me as the instructor, we did have demonstration portions, but I would also have to just speak into the camera and think about, how to explain a smear or how to explain a heel hook without actually doing it. And it made me realize how kinesthetic climbing is. I mean, I already knew that obviously, but it's such a movement and balance based sport. And so just trying to describe it is extremely difficult. So I had to work through that myself. But just being outside and, talking about conservation and talking about preserving the areas and being aware of ourselves as climbers and our impact in a place that I've visited and climbed in for so long really hit home for me too as to how valuable these spaces are.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time, and good luck on the knee.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep. Bye-bye.
All right, that's our conversation with Nina Williams. You can find both of the online courses that we discussed at climbing.com. Intro to Bouldering is available now, and Boulder Harder will be launched on October 1st. Next, we have our conversation with Quinn Brett, so let's just get right to it.
So we were listening to Grateful Dead.
I know.
As I came in here, have you always been a Deadhead?
I wouldn't say I'm a Deadhead, but I enjoy their music.
Yeah. I've been a big fan of the Grateful Dead ever since high school.
Yeah.
So cool. I was pleasantly surprised to hear
wasn't
that.
there just like maybe a month ago a band that all the Deadhead fans are really they were in Red Rocks or something recently?
Yeah, well I think
I don't know the name
Dead
of it.
and Company.
Yes.
They were in Boulder.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
I had lots of friends who were like, yeah. Cool.
Yeah. So you've been doing a lot of interviews as well.
Kind of,
it seems
yeah.
like...
I mean, I did one in January, I think, for the Sharp End, and then that's about it for like talking loud interviews, but otherwise like writing. I mean, I've been probably blogging too much, but...
Well, I imagine that's like a good outlet for you.
Yeah, it's kind of like journaling, but which I've been doing as well, but yeah, it's a good outlet. Are
you sick of it, or as far as like other people contacting you to be interviewed and stuff like that?
I can get tiresome, but what I don't want is I don't know. I'm like, I don't want to be like too much Quinn. Like there's this event this weekend on Saturday that is the Rocky Mountain Rendezvous, and a coworker was like, you should be one of the presenters. And I was like, no, I don't think I should. I don't want to be, I don't need to talk. Like I can MC it or whatever, but yeah.
So what, are you going to MC it or?
Probably. And I'm hoping that I haven't been able to there's two presenters and the second one has been kind of like elusive this week. So I'm like, well, shit. I might have to present if he doesn't.
Step it up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So where did you grow up? Are you originally from Colorado?
No, New Hope, Minnesota.
You're from Minnesota.
Oh, yeah.
Nice. Where's New Hope?
New Hope, it's like suburb northwest, like 10 miles near Plymouth, Crystal, Robbinsdale.
Okay. And did you start climbing when you were living out there?
Mm-hmm.
And how did you get into it? Were your parents into it?
No, but they were into hiking. And so when we were kids, we would travel to different national parks on summer vacation. We had like their 2-week vacation, and they would take their 2 weeks off. And at first, I think our first vacation was like the Badlands or something.
I love
and I was 4 years old.
Yeah.
But then every year as we got older, we would go a little bit further west. And my brother and I would both get a little bit more exploratory. And next thing you know, we were scrambling more stuff and then climbing more things.
Yeah.
And then it was kind of like, oh. And somehow my parents amused me sometime in high school with buying me the John Long book, How to Rock Climb.
Yeah.
And that was like my freshman year Christmas present. And then my sophomore year Christmas present was a rope. And then I got some quick draws, and I didn't have any partners or anybody to do this stuff with yet, but I was really interested in it and kind of taught myself.
So they were getting you the gear before you were actually really doing it.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool for your parents to be doing it, pretty progressive. I know my parents always hated me rock climbing. They're like, we don't want to hear about it.
Well, yeah, they didn't love it. And of course now they're like, that's great.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think they just saw that it kept me busy. Like I liked the mental and the physical aspect of it even as a kid. And yeah, so they bought me all the gear. And then I randomly in like junior of high school, a girlfriend was going on a weekend. She was like, I'm going rock climbing this weekend. And I was like, well, how are you getting to do that? And she's like, well, I'm part of the Civil Air Patrol. I was like, cool. Can I join the Civil Air Patrol? So I joined, and I went on Wednesday nights. We went to the local airstrip, and we learned things about planes and like did laps around the tarmac. And then on the weekends, because one of the instructors knew how to rock climb on the weekends, he would take us all rock climbing.
Really cool. Like, yes. And this was like top roping and stuff, I imagine?
Like top roping in Taylor's Falls, Minnesota.
And what type of rock are you climbing on?
I think that was mostly schist.
Okay.
Yeah.
And were you obsessed like right away? Was this something that...
not obsessed, but I mean, I was just always an athlete. It wasn't necessarily rock climbing. It was just like I would bike to high school, and I didn't have to, and I would run afterwards. And yeah, I don't know. I'd play little games like my house is on the top of the hill, but you had to drop down the hill and then go up this other huge hill to get to like elementary school and middle school and high school and all that stuff. And I would start playing these games of like, okay, bike up the hill without standing up, like sit in your seat. Like even at that age, I was just
very adventurous.
Yeah, and just challenging myself, I guess, physically.
And were you into like team sports and stuff like that as well?
A little bit, yeah. Like I did. My parents were good in that they wanted me to be well versed. So I swam. I was on the swim team. I was on the basketball team, the softball team. I ran track. I played piano, and then I joined the chess club.
Awesome. So athletic and somewhat intellectual, it sounds like.
Yeah, a little bit.
And what type of stuff were you into outside of like sports and adventure? You big into books or music?
Music, yep. So playing piano and singing. So I sang. I was in a traveling ensemble in high school.
Awesome.
Yep. And we would sing all over the place, like Christmas caroling and going to we sang at the White House. Our ensemble sang there for Christmas one year.
Whoa. For the president or?
Yeah.
Which president?
I was Clinton.
Oh, wow.
And trying to think. I don't know. I always like to draw and pottery. I love like ceramics. Yeah.
Sounds like you had a lot of hobbies.
Yeah.
Staying busy all the time.
Yeah.
And how was your brother older or younger?
Yeah, older. He's 4 years older.
And did he get into climbing as well?
He did, not as much as me, as young as me. But then once I started getting into it more, like once we were in college, we would all go. Now we had all the tools, and we would take my brother, my mother, and my dad, and we would go. My parents then had moved to Arizona, when I was a sophomore in college. And so we would go spend Christmas down there, which was nice because now it's a warm climbing location.
Yeah. Cool. So, what areas were you traveling to in Arizona?
They're just outside of Phoenix, so we would travel to Queens Creek a bit, and then McDowell. I never had climbed on Camelback.
Okay.
And then now it's a popular area called the Homestead, but I had been there many years ago when it was first being developed by people bolting and all that jazz.
And what did your parents do?
My dad is a psychologist, but he pretty much runs medical clinics now. He's like the HR side, and my mom is in travel.
Where did you go to college?
I went to University of Minnesota for my undergrad and University of Colorado for my graduate degree. And then I decided to go to Antioch University in Seattle trying to get another graduate degree because I thought I should do more school. But it turns out I was paying a lot of money for not a good enough education.
Yeah, so. But you love school, it sounds like.
Yeah, I like learning.
You like learning?
Yeah.
And what were you studying?
My undergrad is in psychology and leadership.
Okay.
And then my graduate degree is educational psych, and I had a teaching license 7 through 12 social studies, but I haven't used it, so I think it expires if you don't use it.
You don't use it, you lose it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we don't want you teaching our little munchkins.
So it sounds like, you were really into climbing. You obviously came to Colorado. When did you know that you wanted to make climbing a profession? Because at a certain point you became a climbing ranger here in Rocky Mountain National Park, right?
Yeah. Well, when I moved here, I started coming here in Estes Park summers in my junior year of college, I believe. Right as my parents moved to Arizona, I was like, well, I don't have their house to crash at anymore, so I might as well go somewhere else. So a friend pointed me to the YMCA of the Rockies here, in fact, and I came out as a summer counselor and guided kids biking and hiking and fly fishing and random stuff. And I went back for my senior year and finished, and as soon as I graduated, I beelined it right back out here. So I knew that experience working at the YMCA was pretty awesome. And I did that again for a few more summers, and I started teaching outdoor education up there, and then started working for a small guiding company here called Kent Mountain Adventure Center. And with Harry, who owned KMAC, it just allowed me to climb more rather than not necessarily fly fishing or going rafting like the YMCA did. And then I worked at Ed's Cantina for many years, and I realized that I could climb on my own, and that's when I started really, I think, developing as a climber. I had a lot more personal time. I'd work at Ed's, and then in the morning go run out at Lumpy and do a little run solo circuit or find partners to climb the Diamond. And every year, I think for many years I applied for the Rocky Mountain job for 3 years.
Yeah.
Before finally someone had to leave in order essentially for me to get the job. Like there was only a team of 5 and all 5 of them loved their job.
Totally.
So it was until one of them left and found another job and wanted to move up in the world that I was able to finagle my way in as a ranger there.
And what does being a ranger entail?
So the qualifications are you have to be an EMT at the very least. Paramedic is preferred, or nursing would be fine. Climb 510, A2, W3, I think, or M3, excuse me. And essentially what you do is I always like to tell visitors in the park that EMTs or paramedics in the city life are pretty much housed at their house, and they're just waiting for a phone call. And when that phone call comes, then they go out and do their job. But in Rocky, instead of sitting around waiting, we're just wandering the park, and then if a call happens, we're out nearby, or at least we're out, and we can, while we're out, if we're not nearby, we're talking to visitors and telling them about the impending thunderstorm that's rolling over the mountain shoulder, or what they need for food and water, and just kind of doing some preventative search and rescue, we like to call it.
And did you have some pretty wild experiences? Yeah,
there's a lot of crazy people out there doing crazy stuff, and unfortunately we had to see not some awesome things like death and body parts. So that part's a hard part of the job.
And how did you deal with that?
I felt like I dealt with it fairly well, and that, not to be morbid, but that death intrigues me in that way.
Yeah, me too, actually.
I remember sometime after college, we traveled to a friend's uncle in South Carolina, and his uncle owned a funeral home and was embalming somebody.
Yeah.
And he asked if I wanted to see, and I said, yeah, I'd like to see that. And it is pretty gross how we do that to a human body.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it was intriguing to see. I think it can be wearing over time for sure. There's places in the park where you can walk by certain parts, and it triggers like, oh, that, I mean, from a little thing like, oh, that's where we rescued the lady with the sprained ankle, to, oh, that's where I had picked up brain parts. So there's definitely those triggers, but I think if you're communicative about it and you're not necessarily, I think, like paramedic, I mean, it can get overwhelming if it's often, and thankfully it's not as so often. It's not like a daily thing for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Are you spiritual or religious? Do you think that has any aspect to it?
I'm not particularly. I think there's like a kismet to the world, but I don't think that has anything to do with it.
So when was the first time that you went to Yosemite?
The very first time was when I was with my family on one of those family vacations. I think I was like 13 or 14. And we just hiked around, and I remember telling my dad, look at that El Cap, I'm totally going to climb that one day.
So when was it that you actually got on the big wall?
Not until, like maybe 10, 15 years later. I didn't climb El Cap till I was like 28 or something. Yeah.
And what gravitated you to that in 2008?
Well, I'd always wanted to, but I just didn't think I was competent enough. I didn't think I was ready. And at Kent Mountain Adventure Center, while I was still working for them, we had a tradition of every fall when our season was rounding up with the guiding season, Harry would let us borrow one of the big vans, like a big Ecoline van, and a whole bunch of us would pile into it and pile all our gear into it and put our bikes on the top and drive out to Yosemite. And this one season, like 4 of the KMAC guides were going, and I wanted to go, so I thought it was my opportunity to have willing partners and people that I knew pretty well and that were safe and I felt confident climbing with and trying hard with.
Yeah. And when you first did it, did you know you were going to be back many, many times?
I'd hoped.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd just like falling in love with Lumpy Ridge here or the Diamond here. These cliffs are amazing, and holy crap, there's a lot of rock climbing to do there. Sure.
And was setting the speed record something that was like in the back of your head?
Never, until once, I think maybe after that first trip to Yosemite, and our little guidery, we like to call it, at the KMAC place, we had a picture of Heidi Wirtz and Vera doing their pose down of doing the speed record, and I looked at it and I was like, that's from 2002? Holy cow, that's like 8 years ago. That doesn't seem that fast. Like, if you just are moving all day, like,
sure,
you could accomplish that. And so I kind of asked around, and at that time I didn't have very many girlfriend partners that I could have asked, and I asked another interim guide for KMAC, Jess, and she said, yeah, let's give it a try. And I'd met her actually my first season in Yosemite with her partner at the time, Buster, and they were attempting to do the nose in a day.
Yeah.
And I think that's where my brain turned, like, coupled with that picture that I saw and with them, like, well, they were trying to do it in a day, and I think they did it in like 20 hours or something. So by no means were they trying to go fast. They just wanted to do it in a day. And at that point in time, that wasn't that popular. Like right now, everyone's doing it in a day.
Sure. And when you guys did do it, did you have your mindset that you were going after the record, or was it you guys just wanted to move fast and you happened to?
Our intentions were we spoke about trying to do it in the fall, and it didn't happen. And then we're like, okay, in January, let's start training. And we had no idea what to do. But for me, I was like, well, it seems like you just have to be able to move all day. So I would swim and bike and run and go climbing in the gym and do some pull-ups and just move all day. And I think she was doing her own training thing. And then we climbed a few times together that spring and went out in June with the intentions of trying to break it. Yeah.
And afterwards, did it feel like it was risky endeavor? Did it feel safe?
It felt safe. I mean, then when we broke it, then it was 10 hours and 20 minutes. So it was, or 10 hours and 19 minutes or whatever. It felt, just like you're moving all the time.
Yeah.
And we weren't really doing any like Pakistani death loop stuff. We were pretty much always leaving each other on belay. Yeah.
So how did you feel in 2017 before your accident? Were you nervous? Did you feel confident?
That stone always makes you nervous. When you're at the base, when you drive into the valley and you're like, really? You climbed that in a day? Like, you climbed that?
But you had done it a number of times at that point, right?
But it still always gives you that, like, holy crap, that cliff is huge. I don't know. Just, it's got this crazy allure. But I think it always helps that usually when you start, you're just doing a pitch at a time. And so usually when you're at the base, I'm not really ever nervous. I think I'm just like, okay, let's just climb a pitch at a time. And like the first 4 pitches, if you don't like it, you can get off. And kind of the same, you can keep going up, and you can keep getting off for a while, which is pretty nice.
Yeah. So for the accident, I read about it. It sounds horrifying. You fell from the boot flake, right? And hit the Texas flake.
Yep.
What do you remember about the experience beforehand and during?
The experience beforehand was like Josie and I both, for some reason, we didn't sleep that well that night before. And part of that was because the Hayden Kennedy thing. We had all just heard about that. And so we were all kind of struggling with that. I had left Estes Park kind of in an odd spot anyway. Like at the end of the climbing season, I was kind of in that tumultuous state of, do I want to leave being a climbing ranger? Like, I love this job, but I don't know if I should keep doing it. I think I should do something else, like get a 401k in my life.
Yeah.
Because there's not a lot of upward mobility with the climbing ranger job, unfortunately. And
almost any job in the climbing industry.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you have a backup plan?
Well, I was debating on nursing school, or again, there's just like this PhD program I'd been draining my feet across for many years, but it wasn't set in stone by any means, no. But it was just a thought, and so I had left Estes Park kind of in an odd spot with my brain and my heart, and I was only in the valley for 6 days before my accident happened, and we hiked that morning and we felt fine. But I remember we did have a conversation in the car, like, well, should we do it? Like, we're here at 10 o'clock, like, should we go? It's kind of late, but we know that we could probably do it in at least 8 hours, like, without being extravagant. And we were like, yeah, I guess we should go. Like, that's what we said we'd do today. And just kind of like this weird conversation, and we felt obligated, but neither were really that psyched. And but when we were hiking to the base, I was like, okay, if we're going to do this, let's do this. Like, I want to try hard today. So let's try to go faster. And we were cruising. We were doing great. I felt good until about the top of the Texas flake. And all of a sudden I got kind of grumpy because as you have to flick the rope around the front of the flake, I got a little grumpy that it got caught. And I remember looking down and seeing Josie not far below me. And I was like, I could just like wait here for her. Like, I'm kind of done. I don't know. But I had one more, like in my schedule, I had one more pitch. I was supposed to lead to the top of the boot. So I was like, you know what, you can do this. Like, took out my phone, had the gear beta on there in particular, and just started firing up it and felt fine moving wise. I was tired, definitely, but I felt fine.
Is that a pretty run out section?
Yes, it definitely can be. And you do a bolt ladder, and then you have to do a cam hook move, and then you get into like a small gear, but it widens really quickly. It's like a 0.3 to red Camelots quite quickly.
Sure.
And usually I'm climbing it with two. Usually I don't just climb it. And this day I had been climbing a bit more than I usually do. But I always have a piece of gear attached to a daisy, if not both daisies, like 2 pieces of gear. And that's where I don't really remember if I took this. I know I had a red Camelot, an ultralight red Camelot attached to the daisy that was normally clipped to my left side. Yeah. And I don't really remember if my hand slipped or if I was waiting that one piece of gear and reaching for another piece of gear to plug in, because I remember thinking that I did want a goal, a number 2 or a number 3, and I think I was reaching to my left hip, like kind of crossward. Yeah. And then I just remember the feeling of being in an elevator and the rock kind of whooshing past my eyes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Do you remember if like a foot popped or like a hand blew?
I have no idea, actually. Like, I know that red ultralight Camelot was attached to my daisy, and I know that I was reaching for a number 2 or a number 3 on my right hip crossways, like from my left hand. And if I was reaching for a number 2, number 3, that means it was bigger than hand size for me, like cupped, and so it could easily have, foot could have popped and my hand slipped and I was out.
Yeah. And then you kind of lose consciousness, I'm assuming, or?
I think so. I think I don't remember hitting.
Yeah.
I just remember like the swooping of the granite. Yeah. And somebody posted on one of the climbing sites that it was the party that we'd passed. We'd passed them when they were on Dolt, and now they were on El Cap Tower. And he says that he saw like my red Camelot go between my legs, which I remember visually seeing as well. But he made it sound like he saw my body kind of jerk away, like I was waiting it. But who knows? That's all.
Yeah. So when did you regain consciousness?
While I was behind the flake, at some point, I think I was unconscious for not very long, like maybe 5-10 minutes. And then Josie came down. She wrapped down to me, and I was face down. So she rolled me over, obviously, like rule number 1, like get a good airway.
Yeah.
And I was moaning, and I did tell her I couldn't feel my legs, and I was complaining mostly of my right arm being totally screwed up. Because I mean, my scapula looks like I was hit with a sledgehammer. So I think that was like the brunt of the impact was that. And I still, like, even when I lay in bed thinking about like, how did I fall? I'm like, sometimes I'm like, how did I hit? Like, how did I survive that?
Yeah. And Josie was, she is a former YOSAR member.
Yeah, exactly.
That must have been extremely helpful.
Yeah, are you kidding me? But yeah, her and I had the same jobs. Like, we did rescue in the summertime and teach EMT courses in the wintertime. So yeah, are you kidding me? To have that valuable resource right there, and
Absolutely.
also cool, calm, and collected as she could be.
Do you feel like being a climbing ranger helps prepare you for the rescue and everything that you're going through?
That's a good question. I think that probably in that moment, maybe, yeah, in that shock moment, yeah, you just, not to freak out, and that's not going to do any good. But I think I was probably in so much pain, and I couldn't move, that I literally was. I was bleeding out of my head, but I wasn't bleeding really anywhere else, so I can't really see that I'm bleeding a whole bunch, and I really do think I was mostly in shock.
And so how long was the rescue?
I think it wasn't that long, in fact, but I when I looked at the top of Texas Lake, it was like 12:20 or so. And I think by the time I was down back in El Cap Meadow, it was 3-ish. So it really wasn't too long, 3 hours that the helicopter operations happened. And I think part of that is like Josie expediting and being able to explain to dispatch what actually occurred and what happened, rather, sometimes you get these dispatch calls that are just like, there's something happening.
Yeah. So they knew what to expect,
right.
And you guys were prepared for them, knew what you needed to do.
Exactly. And having that team that was on El Cap Tower who we'd passed, like, I think they just displayed all their kit and just rigged a nice landing spot for Brandon and Aaron to come swooping in, and had a lot of things were rigged, and that made it a lot more quick.
So where did they take you to?
I got flown. So we flown off the mountain down to El Cap Meadow, and then I got transferred to another helicopter, and then I was flown to Modesto.
Okay.
And the reason being there is that was just they had an opening, or that's where the contract ship or whoever it was coming from came from Modesto, and they have a ability to do spinal cord or spinal stabilization.
So you were there for a while.
Yeah, I wasn't. The intentions, most people probably wouldn't have been there so long, but I wasn't accepted anywhere else. Like, I wasn't accepted to a rehab facility because of my scapula, my broken scapula. So I couldn't do any weight-bearing stuff, which for a rehab facility, now that my legs don't work, that's how you move. And so they didn't want to take me yet. So my mom did a really good job of researching like places I could go intermittently, like if I needed to go to a nursing home or something, but that's not ideal because then I'm just going to sit and fester. And then fortuitously, but not fortuitously, I happened to get, because of my surgery, I got a huge infection in my psoas muscle, like a softball size infection mass. And so the hospital in Modesto just kept me there while we waited out that infection and waited for me to get off IV antibiotics. And so luckily I didn't have to be moved a whole bunch of times. I just stayed in Modesto, and that was for 5 weeks, and then was moved to Craig Hospital in Denver.
Okay. And how are you dealing with it psychologically? I can't even imagine. I've dealt with very few injuries, and those like just throw me off my rocker. And for you, climbing was your life, and for you to be going through that.
Moving was my life.
Exactly.
Yeah, like, not necessarily climbing. Like, I loved running uphill so much, and swimming and biking, and I would say, some friends are like, oh, she's doing so great, she's doing so amazing, and my mom would say, oh, she's not doing great at all. Yeah, I mean, I'm back in Estes Park, which is lovely to be home, but my friendships have changed as people aren't able to cope with me, or aren't able to realize that I can go do more things and just sit around and eat and drink. Yeah. And staring at Longs Peak and Lumpy Ridge all day, every day is pretty hard. Some days are better than others. I have nerve pain, which is pretty incredibly debilitating, mostly every other day. Okay. Thankfully, as we're talking today, it's not a high nerve pain day. But tomorrow, yay! It's wild that it is as I'm yelling. It's wild that it's every other day. But on those high nerve pain days, it's just like, yeah, I'm pretty depressed and I don't see how I'm going to do this for another X amount of years, or I feel pretty angry at myself, dealing with a lot of like, I failed kind of things, that I failed and that I was selfish and that I was stupid, and those kind of, that internal dialogue is often.
And do you have tools for dealing with that? Do you have things that help you?
Trying to, like, well, when I'm laying in bed at night, I'm usually more consumed by the nerve pain. So I've just been doing a lot of breath work, which, like the yogi in me before, like, I mean, you know how to breathe and how to meditate, but it's really hard to change that focus. And it's funny because I downloaded some thunderstorm sounds, like rain thunderstorm sounds. So if I'm really in nerve pain time, I just turn that on, and like, it helps actually. Or a podcast helps, like just distracting me from just laying there in bed with this incredible amount of pain.
Yeah.
But as far as like the depression aspect of it, I think talking to friends and just trying to put it out there, like being okay with weeping and crying. And
you mentioned before, you're doing a lot more writing. Do you think that helps you kind of process it? And
I think so, but I find like I feel like I'm repetitive. Like I notice, like in some of my blog posts, if I'm reading back through the older blog posts, I feel like I'm talking about the same shit. Like I'm not getting through this process. And granted, I know that this is a giant life change and I shouldn't be getting through it like lickety split.
Sure.
But it does feel frustrating to me that I'm talking about the same stuff. Like I'm really struggling with the fact that I'm single, and I'm really struggling with the fact that I will never date again, or that I'm not going to walk again, or all of this crap.
Yeah.
It seemed, and I'm like, get over it. Like, find a better, like, the psychologist in me knows that I'm kind of digging in the same rut, and I'm like, get out of the rut, find a new pathway. But it's so hard to like get out of that rut and find that new pathway and find the joy and the purpose and the healing.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, I have like a bunch of friends who are deal with those same issues, who have gone through a whole lot less. So, I mean, I know it doesn't really help, almost during those kind of darker times, it seems like almost nothing helps.
Yeah.
But other people, go through it. Do you feel like going through the accident, going through the recovery process has also opened your eyes to things that you're grateful for?
Yes, a little bit, but not much. Yeah. I mean, I recognize the things that I should be grateful for, that I am here, and that I do have a brain, that I can be speaking to you. I can use my hands. And somebody posted a good quote yesterday or the other day about trauma, and how there's always worse, but what you're going through is your own, and how you go through it is your own. So it doesn't mean that just because, yes, I should be gracious that I have hands and a brain that works and I recognize myself in the mirror, doesn't mean that what I'm going through isn't as valid as it is. I don't know. It was a good reminder that, I can be gracious for these things, but I should recognize that I should be patient with myself, and that I am going through some shit.
Sure. Yeah. And there sometimes isn't an answer or a solution. Sometimes you just need to go through it. Right?
Yeah. And I think I felt like I was kind of given a triple deck of dealing with things in a row, and I'm grieving all three things, and I'm needing to figure out how to, sometimes I can grieve for one more than the other. And that's where I think that repetitiveness comes in, because I'm like, I thought I sorted that. Nope. Back around. Here we go again.
So it's been about a year now, almost.
My God, can you believe it?
Is it crazy?
I haven't walked in almost a year. That's wild.
It is wild. So, and there's been, other big wall speed climbing accidents.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think about, the validity of big wall speed climbing? Is it worth it? Is it worth the risk? Is it something that, we as a community should be thinking more about?
This is something I don't know if I've come full circle. I mean, I always have felt that people should always just do what they want to do. And I think I learned that a hard way. Like, I think I've spoken of Andrew before, but that Andrew was a man that I dated a while ago, and he died soloing in the Black Canyon. And after his death, I was like, coincidentally, a girlfriend died the same day in a car accident. And So kind of like literally put it face to face. Like, she died doing just like driving home from work, not doing anything exciting. He definitely died doing what he loved. And although neither of them had the intentions of dying that day, like I would have way have rather been in Andrew's situation than in Annie's. But as far as speed climbing goes, like, I don't know, like I try to tell like my parents, like they were like, we didn't know that you were into this speed climbing thing so much. And I was like, well, you did know, because I broke the speed record well before my accident. But I'd also say on this day, like, yes, Josie and I were going fast, but we're still, golly, over half this amount of time that Tommy and Alex are going. Like, we're not like running up the rock. Like, it really is more efficiency. Like, if you can just keep moving and you're really efficient at the belays and you're not like, you're just moving, like, it's not that dangerous. Like what I was doing, yes, I feel like that's where I'm mad at myself. Like, I feel like I was being cavalier. Why did I only have one piece of gear, and instead of my normal 2, which I normally do on every other ascent, I've had 2 pieces of gear that I'm shuffling along up the boot flake. So this day I do feel like I was being more cavalier in that last 2 minutes. Like, why did I do that? I don't know. If I would have been 2 minutes slower, 20 seconds slower, I would not have had my injury. But again, like, that's where everyone's like, well, you could have summited and you and Josie could have been driving home and gotten a car accident.
Yeah. And you read in like instructional books about climbing or mountaineering, like speed is safety. Like the faster you're on and off the mountain,
for sure,
or the
like
face, the safer you're going to be.
Yeah, like weather and like calorically, like so I don't feel like yes, and people would argue with my statement just back then that yes, what you were doing was dangerous. You were doing a Pakistani death loop. You were climbing off there without a belay. Yes, but that was what also my skill set and I was climbing within reason. Like, I can climb 513. I was using a 2 crack Jumar system on 510. Like, I feel pretty competent on 5.9. And yes, shit can happen, and that's how people slip and fall, and things do happen. But things can happen even if you are feeling safe and you're climbing your 510 that you've climbed 100 times. Like, I don't know, it's a hard one. And so I do feel there is some kind of conflict with the speed climbing. I think that's like what people are trending towards. Like, now, I said earlier, the nose in a day is now this popular thing. But to climb the nose in a day in 20 hours really isn't that dangerous. It doesn't put you, like, you can climb and every pitch be normally belayed and reasonably do it in 14 hours, depending on your skill set.
So are you able to get outside? Are you able to get out and go camping and do stuff like that?
Yeah, I've been camping a few times. My girlfriend Lizzie rallied a whole bunch of us, like Lizzie and Madeline and Heidi and I. We all went pack rafting down.
Oh, cool.
The lower Gunnison, so we were in Escalante Canyon. We went pack rafting for like 4 days, maybe a couple weeks ago, and then I've just been like car camping otherwise. Been biking a lot, which has been nice, and I realize every time I do something for the first time, I'm totally a crier. So like the first time I got on the bike, because it's a hand cycle, and I'm like, well, this is totally different than biking used to be, and I'm using my hands. Great, I love using my hands these days. Like, that's totally like a frustrating thing.
That's not a good thing.
Right,
actually bad.
So been biking a bit. I swim a lot, and up here there's just a community center, and it's an indoor pool, but I've been trying to go out paddleboarding or kayaking or something, like down on the Front Range and get outside. And then wheeling around. My friends and I have monikered it strolling. So let's go for a stroll, and they'll walk and I'll roll.
Yeah. Any other new hobbies that aren't necessarily outdoors, but things that you've been getting into?
Not quite yet. Like, I used to draw a little bit before, and I've just been doodling. But guitar.
Did you play that guitar over there? Yeah, I was going to ask you.
I've been fiddling with it. Awesome. I suck at it, but it's definitely more portable than a piano.
Yeah.
But it's been fun to learn, totally. And I used to sing all the time, so like I've had some friends here, and I totally miss that part of life. Like, I haven't hung around a campfire and sang music in so long, and not like we can have campfires right now, but
no. Well, I think that's all the questions I had. Did I miss anything that you wanted to talk about?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
That's it. That's the conclusion of the show. Want to thank both of our guests, Nina and Quinn, for taking the time to sit down and talk with us. Today's theme music was provided by Small Houses at smallhouses.band.
And if you haven't done so already, please make sure to subscribe to the podcast at Apple Podcast or wherever you get your podcast. Leave a comment, leave a review, tell a friend, help spread the word. All right. Thank you all for joining. It's been fun. See you at the next Basecamp.